I think it's on the big eye. Well, okay.
In the ocean, between the Atlantic and the Caribbean Sea.
They get really incensed when you point out they're just a mid-sized
We're
island.
ready.
What's that saying?
So they get really incensed when you point out they're just a mid-sized island now. They're smaller than St. Thomas, they're bigger than St. Joe. Way below.
We're back on the record in regular session. Just moved out of executive session. We'll be discussing pending litigation. Got some legal advice. No decisions were made, so we're gonna continue with our agenda. Then item number 2, consent agenda pre-assessment. Please do that, Ms. Connor.
Good morning. Staff recommends the commission to enter pre-assessment on the following dockets. Docket 640, St. John Ferry Rate Investigation, a total of 22,000. The assessment will be divided equally among the
640
following.
or 691?
640. Oh, sorry, 691. My correction. The total assessment will be 22,000. The assessment will be divided equally among the following franchisees. Varlock Ventures Inc., 11,000, and Transportation Services of St. John, 11,000. Also on docket 706, WAPA Electric System Rate Investigation, an assessment needs to be made on 96,600.
You got the recommendation. Is there any objection to the consent agenda for the pre-assessment?
No objection.
Hearing none. It's approved. Thank you. Do we need to do another roll call?
Oh, you need a roll call?
I was asking because we came out of executive session.
Oh, we did?
Without objections, you.
Okay, all the commissioners are present. Yeah, item number 3, administrative. Mr. Toy.
We have 2 matters under the administrative matters, one being the selection of the technical consultant. And a committee was formed to review the submittals in response to our RFQ for technical consultants. We do have, we've received a total of 16 submittals, and staff is reviewing those submittals. We do have a meeting with the selection committee, which is comprised of one of our commission members, Commissioner Hughes, who is sitting on that committee, and we are scheduled for review of the submittals tomorrow. You want to add anything?
So the committee consists of one person?
No, the committee consists of staff, which is Attorney Sprain, Ms. Hendricks, Assistant Executive Director, Ms. Hendricks, and myself, and Commissioner Hughes.
When is this meeting scheduled for?
Tomorrow, yes. So soon after that meeting, we would forward updated information to the commission.
Thank you.
The next item on that under administrative matters is our fiscal year 2026 budget preparation. The Public Services Commission is scheduled to report to the legislature on Thursday, June 26th at 10 a.m. There are, and this was placed on the agenda for informational purposes to our commissioners. We have very, very little changes to from our previous budget, the 2025 fiscal year budget. This year's total is $2,079,290.51. which is very slightly below our prior fiscal year, 2024, which was 2,079,297.07, and our 23, which was 2,104,324.73. Except for changes in personnel item on the budget, there are no other significant changes, and those changes really are due to replace staff who have discontinued or exited the agency, and some changes, of course, in the fringes that were increased recently. Outside of that, there are no changes to our budget. I don't know if Ms. Khanna has anything to add. Any information that the commissioners may wish to be. As soon as the entire packet is completed, I will forward it to commissioners for information purposes.
I would like to recommend in submitting this budget proposal to the OMB that they are under the assumption that you're going to be collecting this money. And since you have not been collecting money, I suggest that in your presentation at the legislature that you ask for a direct appropriation. You better be very specific about that. That you're asking again for direct appropriation in lieu of the fact that, in lieu of the funds that we're not collecting.
More specifically, the assessments.
Yes,
The
yes.
annual assessment.
Usually the assessments are used to pay this,
That's
the
correct.
amount, and OMB is under the impression that you're not going to need actual money. The actual money needs to be budgeted
That's
just in case as a backup.
Thank you for that.
But is that what we really want to do? The
Well,
laws,
we really don't want to send a message to WAPA that we're getting our money that way, but we also need to make sure that the employees are paid.
well,
So, I mean, it can be balanced depending on collections and, you know, OMB will release accordingly. As long as you report to them what assessments have been collected, they will release quarterly allotments accordingly.
my only comment, I don't know that we want to endorse the last year's practice of having the government give us an appropriation when the statute provides that we're supposed to collect these funds from the regulated utilities. If the government chooses to send us a check, that's fine, but I don't know that I want to be on the record of requesting the direct
Doesn't work like that.
appropriation. I mean, that's, you know, I just want to, so that, you know, nobody comes the following year and say, we don't have to pay these assessments because you're getting the money. And here's the evidence that you're requesting it, and therefore, you know, you're, you know, in a roundabout way, you know, going against the statute. I mean, that's my concern. So that's something that we may need to get legal counsel involved in making sure whatever wording we present to the legislature, we don't tie our hands for the future.
Perhaps we make the suggestion or the request that the appropriations that would otherwise be made to the Waste Management Authority be made directly to the Public Services Commission. That would set no precedent for WAPA, who receives no appropriations from the legislature. But Waste Management is largely funded by appropriation already. We're not asking for extra money here. We're just asking for direct payment as a portion of their approved appropriation. So they can knock Waste Management's number down $1 million and send that money instead to us. That would be less of a precedent that I'd be concerned with, Chair.
That can work, that's a solution, that can work.
I just want to make sure we have a clear line in terms of our authority, what the law says, and we're complying with the statute.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, that's it for administrative matters.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Satori, did I hear you? I'm not exactly sure. Maybe I missed it. Will the commissioners receive a line item description of the budget, or did we already?
We will, you will,
Okay, thank you.
for sure.
Any other questions or comments on those two items? There are none. Let's move on to item number 4, energy matter, docket 706, Wapco Electric System rate case. Who speaks to that matter?
Probably will take the first moment if I may. We had previously advised the commission that
Chair,
former Senate.
what happened to docket 672, WAPA customer service?
That was taken off of the agenda because we didn't get the information ahead of time. So I don't believe any of the commissioners had, well, I know I didn't have an opportunity to read it.
I did.
You did?
I did as well.
So it was deleted from the agenda.
Okay, I must miss that.
I think an amended agenda was sent out yesterday indicating that.
Yeah, because I was looking at the old agenda that had it on there, and yeah. See that it changed.
Okay. Docket 706, Wapco Electric System late case.
Excuse me. Boyd Sprain speaking on behalf to the court reporter to use that information. We had previously advised the commission that former Senator Genevieve Whitaker has been selected as a hearing examiner to handle the WAPA rate investigation. We have introduced that fact to WAPA as well. We've advised them that Ms. Whitaker is taking on that role. We've asked Ms. Whitaker to be present online today. And I see that she is present here. If you have any questions or comments or wish to have any communications with her at this time, but we are just beginning that process. I expect that we will be we have set a regular scheduled meetings for the commission staff with the hearing examiner, and we will be involving WAPA in those meetings as this week moves forward to set a schedule for this process. This is just informational at this point.
Questions or comments from commissioners?
Okay.
Commissioner Hughes?
None, thank you.
Commissioner McGrath?
No.
All right. Yeah, no questions or comments?
Do you want to ask?
Can we move on to that?
No, I was asking, would you like to have Ms. Whitaker introduce herself? Attorney Whitaker, would you like to introduce yourself to the members of our commission?
Good morning. Can you go? Anyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good morning to everyone. Good morning to Executive Director Satori. Good morning to all the commission members, those listening and viewing. I am Genevieve Whitaker, former senator, and it's an honor for me. I want to thank the commissioner for the consideration. I look forward to the work involved and in support of our community. So thank you very much. And I look forward to supporting the commission in any way I can and moving this matter forward. Thank you. Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whitaker. Attorney Whitaker. Move on to docket 72, Wapco Electric Levelized Energy Adjustment Clause. Docket 702. Who speaks to that?
I believe Mr. Madden is online, and I believe Ms. Kelly and Mr. Lemuel are present for WAPA.
Who goes first?
I'm sorry, Mr. Rodriguez.
Lavender?
I'll quit pronouncing it French.
Could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Is that what you got? Thank you.
All right. State your name for the record, please. If you want to make your presentation, you can go right ahead.
Good morning, Lorraine Kelly, Chief Financial Officer of Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority.
Good morning, Lemuel Lavenier, Chief Operating Officer, Electric Systems, Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioner Williams. Good morning to all the commissioners and Mr. Curry and the staff and members of the public listening here today. WAPA has presented the electric LEAC.
Can you speak up, please?
I'm sorry. Good morning. WAPA has presented the electric LEAC with no change. We have requested the LEAC rate stay for the electric at 22.22 cents. And please know that we have had in-depth conversations with not only the staff, but also with Georgetown Consulting. Several meetings that were held, some in person, some via Teams. We greatly thank the participation of all the staff. During those meetings, we had not only a COO of Electric sitting present here with me today, we had attendees from Sargent Lundy, the consulting firm that assists with creating the Plexus model that was requested by the PSC, as well as Ernst & Young, who prepares some of the documentation for the database analytics, as well as several of the team from WAPA, including those that are supportive of the plant operations, as well as the financial and analytical team. During those meetings, Georgetown Consulting and your staff had the opportunity to ask any and all questions that they may like. There were follow-up sessions, both in meetings that were held, and there were follow-up sessions with Georgetown Consulting and your staff with a series of questions that came primarily from Georgetown Consulting. And our executive director, Mr. Knight, has provided, I think, a couple of responses to those. At this time, we believe that we have responded to all questions given by your staff in Georgetown Consulting.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Mr. Madden, we'll hear your report, and then we could ask questions of both presenters at the same time.
And if I may, Sergeant Lundy is not able to attend today, but we do have the EY team present, dialed in on the link, should you have any specific additional questions for them today.
For such a large company, they couldn't get somebody to appear today?
It is a different matter as to the reason why they're not in attendance.
Okay, Mr. Madden?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, all. I will present a overall summary of our report, which you have recently received. And as we did last time, I'll go through the highlights and be available for any questions. So WAPA submitted its petition on the 22nd of April on the electric LEAC. Information on the water LEAC was actually presented back in December of 2024.
Excuse me, Mr. Madden, can you pause?
I'm sorry?
Just ask you to pause for a
Hold on
minute,
a
Mr.
minute.
Madden.
You get a staff to make copies of the report, he's going to see it. And I like that a hard copy also.
I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
Okay, Rick. So continuing, WAPA continues to make these quarterly filings without meeting the minimum filing requirements, the MFRs. The MFRs require a narrative to describe the major assumptions, such as the basis of dispatch, which is critical to determining the fuel consumed and its cost. Unusual events such as payment of the $2 million incentive only to have Wärtsilä units 4 through 7 not function and be repaired under warranty. The unusual length of time to replace an existing fuel contract and the reasons for that. WAPA's filing is essentially a one-page deal that just presents the highlights in a conclusionary form. indicating that they want to keep the LEAC at the current level. As such, staff believes the filing is incomplete and could be disregarded by the commission if they so chose. The consequences of this, of course, would be severe, including taking no action on the various LEAC rates, which are due to expire on June of this year. There are four major issues that we've identified as affecting the fuel costs in this LEAC. First is the efficient generation and dispatch. Second, the transportation costs and new fuel supply contract. Third is the dispatch of renewable energy. And fourth is the allowance for collection of deferred fuel. With regard to the first issue, which is the efficient generation and dispatch, for the electric LEAC filing, WAPA states in its filing that the 4 new Wärtsilä units would finally be online commercially to provide some rate relief using propane as a fuel. This is welcome news and will be the first time in years that the cost of fuel will drop below the 22.22 cents in the electric LEAC, which has been approved by the PSC. It is WAPA's request, as you just heard, that the LEAC not be lowered to provide rate relief for customers, but to allow the rate to continue at 22.22 cents in order for WAPA to recover what it claims is deferred fuel. WAPA's ratepayers have been waiting nearly a decade for more reliable and efficient generation with associated rate relief. WAPA management confirmed that the units are indeed on track and will be available to dispatch on propane. In this LEAC, the fuel mix that is projected by WAPA is 94.4% on propane and 5.6% on oil. Staff has made no change to that mix of fuel. With regard to the transportation and the new fuel supply contract, WAPA's petition says the following. Effective June 1, 2024, WAPA entered into a 9-month propane supply agreement with Vitol. In March of 25, WAPA signed a 6-month extension with Vitol in order to maintain LPG deliveries while undergoing the RFP process for a new LPG supplier. The current extension will expire in August of 2025. At this time, there is significant uncertainty around what responses WAPA will receive to the RFP and what transportation rates will be offered. As such, WAPA is assuming a continuation of the current LPG transportation rate until RFP responses are received. Well, WAPA has confirmed that the current agreement with Vitol imposes a transportation cost of 59.5 cents a gallon on LPG shipments. But WAPA has confirmed that bids were received on May 21st, 2025, and indicated that they were sealed and given to the evaluation committee. Just point out, therefore, that the stance taken in the petition that they do not have this information at this point appears to be incorrect. They have the information. It's with the evaluation committee. So at this time, the price for LPG that the commission approved of 33.33 cents a gallon is what staff recommends be used rather than continuing the current price actually paid by WAPA of 59.5 cents a gallon in this proceeding. I just want to point out, as we have in footnote 5, the fuel contract is not being submitted to the PSC for review and approval. It is staff's understanding from council that the PSC has been given additional powers recently that would allow such review and approval, and to state that without such approval, the rates to cover fuel prices in the contract would not be guaranteed by the PSC. With regard to the dispatch for renewable power, Staff has basically adopted the projections made by WAPA in this proceeding. WAPA assumes that the Petronella, Hogansburg solar farms are online and providing power to WAPA. Additionally, the batteries for both Petronella and Wärtsilä generators are also assumed to be online and functioning. With regard to the deferred fuel, WAPA requests that the electric LEAC rate of 22.22 cents per kilowatt hour be continued. Staff does not believe that this is a reasonable assumption, given that the 4 new units, after more than 3 years on island, have already produced power, although not at their full rated capacity. No information has been provided on the deferred fuel by WAPA directly or in response to questions asked by staff on October 28th of 2024. With the 4 new Wärtsiläs, WAPA projects that its fuel costs will be 5.27 cents a kilowatt hour below the electric LEAC rate of 22.22 cents a kilowatt hour. Based on the projected kilowatts projected for this coming year, which is 164,000 megawatt hours, fuel costs, the amounts to WAPA's fuel costs being $32,419,000 on an annual basis below the LEAC revenues that are projected. In other words, the fuel costs will be 32.4 million lower than the revenues collected at 22.22 cents. It's WAPA's position that it'll keep all of the surplus for itself, provide no relief to ratepayers, or concurrent with assessments from its regulators, which I've stated in prior proceedings, highly irregular. Staff has not seen this in any other jurisdiction. With the adjustments proposed by staff for lower transportation cost of LPG at 33.3 cents a gallon and more efficient dispatch of the new Wärtsiläs, the fuel costs are projected to be $42 million below the revenues that'll be collected. This is substantial. Staff acknowledges that WAPA has no working capital left, has deferred payments to its vendors in significant amounts, and is significantly in arrears on the maintenance of its generation and distribution systems. So the issues in our report that we say need to be addressed by the Commission is the shipping transportation costs for the LPG. WAPA explains that while the Commission has approved and rates an LPG transportation cost of 33 cents a gallon, WAPA's actual cost has been renegotiated to temporarily extend the 59.5 cent gallon per rate through August of 2025. The issue of what rate for LPG transportation the Commission will approve for rate making in determining the appropriate LEAC rate, as well as computation in determining the appropriate deferred energy costs, will determine the permissible shipping charges to be recovered from customers, and that has not yet been determined by the Commission. Staff recommends the entire process of fuel procurement be investigated in a separate filing, and WAPA be required to provide and justify the process under which a new contract was procured. With regard to the dispatch, WAPA has included all 7 units for dispatch in the LEAC calculation, as shown in the report, all dispatched on LPG. We do note that in WAPA's projections, unit 4 through 7 are larger, they're 9 megawatts, and units 1, 2, 3 are 7 megawatts. And units 4 through 7 have a better heat rate, approximately 8,000, and units 1 to 3 approximately 9,000. Staff's requested information as to why the output for 6 and 7 with better heat rates was not fully utilized. Actually, no response was received from WAPA, even though Sargent and Lundy were present at those conferences. They indicated it was a reasonable question. They were to go back and think about it and come back with a response. They never did. Staff has therefore increased the output for units 6 and 7 to the level of units 4 and 5 and decreased the generation from units 1 to 3 by a like amount. Now, I just want to add in here that in response to the statement of Ms. Kelly that the information was responded to, actually it was not. A substantial amount were not responded to, and there were significant issues raised, which we turned around in a matter of hours and sent back to Director Knight, indicating that we'd like responses. The most troubling seems to be the heat rates. Units 1 through 3 and 4 through 7 have guaranteed heat rates in the contract in the mid-8,000s. Now, the actual heat rates projected for units 4 through 7 are about 8,000, below the maximum, which means it's more efficient than and within the guarantee provided. The heat rates for units 1 through 3 are projected almost at 10,000, at 96, 9,700. There's no explanation why this is not above the guarantee in the contract. What action WAPA is taking with regard to this? It's been this way now for several LEAC filings. It's troubling. If that is in fact a guarantee and the units are similar, why aren't the units producing similar efficiencies? No response from WAPA has been received to date on that amount, and that's a significant issue. WAPA should be required to provide this information forthright. Now, with regard to the calculation, based on the modifications I spoke to above, staff has undertaken this calculation, subject to the caveats listed below in using the model provided. Using 33 cents a gallon and making the change in the dispatch of the more efficient Wärtsilä units, we're projecting that with very few changes in the spreadsheet, the LEAC rate would be 15.39 cents. And as we indicated, this would produce a fuel cost approximately $42 million below the revenues to be collected on an annual basis, not on a quarterly basis. With regard to the issue of when the LEAC rates are below the current cost, WAPA's position is that the costs supporting the LEAC are lowered to a point where the LEAC is below the current rate. The LEAC should not be reduced. You've heard arguments about this in various proceedings, and it's repeated here in this proceeding. Staff does not agree with these recommendations. Currently, these savings below the rate are $42 million, as provided earlier in the report. It's our recommendation that the LEAC rate of 15.39 cents be implemented as the new LEAC rate. The Commission can make an allowance in the rate to allow WAPA a slightly higher rate to partially pay off liabilities that WAPA has accrued. While this proceeding brings the first potential relief to ratepayers, the information provided in this and prior proceedings show large liabilities that WAPA has outstanding, and paying them off will first have the appropriate amount to be recovered to be approved by the Commission. The account payables for WAPA, the current liabilities, is currently in excess of 100 million. And just as a rule of thumb, for practical purposes, every 1 cent in LEAC rates that's reduced produces about $6 million of revenues or savings, whichever way you want to look at it. There's a section with regard to issues on the information and models provided by WAPA for the LEAC. We have used the model as filed, minimal changes to the inputs, as I've just indicated, to make our recommendation. I'm sorry, did somebody say something?
No, that was outside. Go ahead.
As is a standard practice, we have used the most recent fuel prices. The date on which we've used the fuel price was May the 25th. It looks like WAPA has changed the source from which it gets this information, and this new source requires a subscription. In the previous spreadsheets, it was based on the CME indexes and was different. We've used the CME index as we've used in all the LEACs previously. Changes are not substantial for this, but it's a standard practice for WAPA and staff to use the most current fuel prices, and we've used May 25. Second, WAPA has extended the current transportation charge, as we've indicated, to 59.5 cents a gallon until the new contract is executed. It's our understanding that WAPA will not submit the fuel contract to the PSC for review and approval. The PSC has not indicated whether it will specifically review the contract when it is submitted to them and approve the terms. As we understand, it now has the authority to do so. Without such approval, the revenues to provide the fuel will not be certain as approved by the PSC. The price currently approved by the Commission is 33 cents a gallon for transportation of LPG. Staff has used this in its recommendation for the LEAC. And the final change we've just discussed previously, I won't repeat it here, which is to increase slightly the generation from the more efficient 4 through 7 units with a corresponding decrease in the 1 through 3 units. There are additional issues that are consistent with the prior report, and that is, what is the long-term plan for generation on St. Croix? When will the plan and milestones be provided to the PSC? Why is this important? Because the St. Croix plant has a heat rate of 14,070 BTUs a kilowatt hour compared to 8,600 for St. Croix. That's a substantial difference in the amount of cost for the fuel. And second, what is the status and funding of the St. Croix water transmission and distribution system? Apparently, been promised by FEMA. Staff recommendations are as follows. The LEAC rate be changed from 22.22 cents to 15.39 cents a kilowatt hour for all bills rendered on July 25 forward, and that rate shall expire on September 30, 2025. WAPA shall immediately declare to the Commission when the new Wärtsilä units are declared commercial. 3, WAPA provide a status report on its efforts to obtain a new LPG and fuel oil contract as soon as approved by the WAPA board. This report shall contain the reasons for the contract extensions, the consultants used to develop the RFP, any special provisions in the contract and the reason for them, an executive summary of the bids received, a report of the evaluation committee, the basis of its recommendation, and the presentation made to the WAPA board on the selection. Any analysis and approval of the WAPA board should also be provided. 4, WAPA shall provide a schedule when the WAPA units are declared in commercial operation, showing the component parts of the amounts owing to Wärtsilä for commissioning and other activities and the payments made against them. WAPA shall indicate whether they are in compliance with the payment terms and state any outstanding issues. 5, a comprehensive report on all planning activities for the St. Croix generation shall be provided to the Commission by August 31, 2025. In our meeting, Director Knight did indicate that certain activities are underway. There is a substantial grant that has been received. PSC has not received any information or copies of these documents. Provide a status report by August 31, 2025 of all anticipated grant funding for both electric and water projects. If I could, we did a prior presentation. The Water LEAC is a small part of this presentation, and it would, with your permission, I would like to just add a couple of sentences and conclude the presentation on both. Staff would not recommend changing the Water LEAC as WAPA has recommended. Additionally, in the next quarterly LEAC, we recommend that WAPA include the impact of the electric REAC rate determined by the Commission in this proceeding, as well as the rate for the WAPA projects for the electric REAC for the next quarter. That concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mallon. Kelly, you have additional comments?
Yes, good morning. Lorraine Kelly, Chief Financial Officer. And I would like to
Speak up, please.
I would like to be very clear. Lorraine Kelly, Chief Financial Officer of Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority. In preparing and presenting the LEAC for the electric, as with all of the communications that we have with PSC and others, we deal with facts. I am the Chief Financial Officer and I deal with facts. Mr. Knight and myself, in fact, on record at 2 of the most recent Public Service Commission hearings, have requested the minimum requirements that Georgetown Consulting refers to. And when we met with the PSC recently, we again requested those be provided. We would again, like on the record, that we would like for that to be provided to us. We fully want to comply, and we have had several meetings. And please know that Mr. Knight is, through me today, again requesting that you provide in writing these requirements. It is not an intention for anyone at WAPA not to comply. We believe that we are complying, and we want to provide, if there is additional information, please put in writing what those minimum requirements are. We will immediately comply.
Is it your testimony or statement today that as you sit here, WAPA does not know what the MFR?
We do not know the additional requirements that are being spoken of. We believe that what we are providing is the minimum being required of us.
Okay, you say you don't know what the additional, but you do know what the MFRs are. Am I correct?
We are.
Okay, so you have to answer my question, yes or no? You know what the minimum filing? Hold on, Ms. Kelly. WAPA knows what the minimum filing requirements for the PSC are as we sit here today. Am I correct?
I'm going to be very specific with my words.
Ms. Kelly, is it a yes or no?
Let me be very specific.
No, don't be specific. Answer the question I'm asking you.
We are providing the requirements.
I'm not going to let you speak if you don't answer my question.
Your use of the word minimum is what is a question.
It can't be a question. Either you know what they are or you don't.
We know what the requirements are.
Okay, fine. Okay, slow down. You know the MFR are. You're saying that as far as you're concerned, the additional requirements that we're asking for, and that's what you want to be put in writing. Am I correct?
Let me be precise.
Yes, now you can be precise.
Georgetown Consulting keeps referring to, please bear with me, the fact that there are requirements that we are not complying with. I do not know what Georgetown Consulting is referring to. We would like Georgetown Consulting to let us know in writing specifically what they are asking us to provide that we are not providing. We believe we are meeting the minimum requirements, and we have asked continually for Georgetown Consulting and for your staff to tell us what Georgetown Consulting is referring to. We believe we are meeting the requirements, whether it's minimum, maximum, mid, median. We believe we are meeting the requirements asked of us. We want clarification, because if we are not providing you what you need, we want to provide it.
All right, fair enough. Go ahead.
And with respect to Georgetown Consulting's reference regarding not having the PSC staff and themselves not having all fuel contracts that are currently in force, our attorney, Sinclair, has just communicated with me that she believes Attorney Spren of the PSC does have all fuel contracts. If for some reason you do not, can you please let us know which specific contract you do not have, and we will provide it within the hour.
And it is your intention that whatever new contract you're negotiating, that you will provide that to the PSC for our review and approval.
Let me be specific in regards to that. When the contract has been approved by the board and is a contract, yes, we will. If I may give you an update right now of where we are. We are in possession of the evaluation report that has been prepared by the evaluation committee. We are in the midst of a procurement process. As such, even I do not know what is in that evaluation report. It is confidential, and we are following our policies. And as such, the report will be discussed with the board on Thursday at our board meeting. And I wanted the PSC to know we received 4 responses. We will be making a presentation to the board on Thursday. And from that, we can provide the same information that we provide to the board, to the committee. And we also might encourage the committee members and/or Georgetown Consulting to hear that public meeting, so that if you have any further conversation or questions from that, we will be able to provide that.
Your board is meeting on Thursday, June 12th, this week,
This
Thursday?
Thursday,
What time is the meeting?
9:30 is the start of the meeting.
All right, thank you.
And our communications team or any of us can provide you the link to log on. It is a committee meeting. The finance committee and the planning committee meeting of the board meets this Thursday.
Oh,
The actual board meeting is 2 weeks hence. In regards to the some of the specifics that were referenced by Georgetown Consulting, please know that we submitted the filing to the PSC on April 15th. We did receive a list of several pages of questions last week from Georgetown Consulting. My understanding is that we had provided, Mr. Knight had provided a response. I don't remember what specific day that response was provided, but I believe from that we did receive additional questions that Mr. Knight then did respond to. I would ask that if there are specific questions where we have provided a response, if it does not meet Georgetown Consulting's need for a response, that he might reach out to us. I'm not aware that there was any feedback since that time that those responses did not meet Georgetown Consulting's need. But if there are any additional questions, we will be more than happy to provide that response. And I do think that it is important that Georgetown Consulting and the PSC present today and the listening public know that in the presentation for the electric LEAC, we have not changed the fuel prices and we have not changed the transportation costs either. That was referred to and made, if I misunderstood Georgetown Consulting, to Mr. Madden. I just wanted to make sure that on the record that we have presented that. But I also do want to let Georgetown Consulting and the PSC and the listening public know that we are absolutely strapped for cash. We have made reference to the fact that we have our outgoings of expenditures greater than our revenue coming in from the utility rates that are provided through the PSC. And I will give you a very clear example of that. The veto payment of $3.3 million for the current shipment of fuel was meant to have been paid last Wednesday. We have made a partial payment, but we do not have the cash in hand to pay that bill right now. If the PSC proceeds to reduce the rate from the 22 cents to the 15 cents, as is done before, that will be catastrophic for the residents and businesses in the USVI.
Thank you for your presentation. You finished?
Thank you for listening me out.
All right. Commissioner Raymond Williams, any questions? Or comments?
No questions here.
Commissioner Hughes?
I have a number of questions. Ms. Kelly, Mr. Madden, some of these will be obviously directed at one or both of you. Feel free to field them. I'll try and direct the questions to the appropriate individual. Ms. Kelly, the new, I don't know who we're calling the new BMR entity for Spanish Town and Dono. But are you current in payment for, are those fields producing, and are you current in payment for those amounts?
Good morning, Commissioner Hughes. Lorraine Kelly, Chief Financial Officer. Thank you for your question. We reference the new BMR as VI RAPC, and that is VI for Virgin Islands RAPC. We should have paid them last week. We do not currently have the funds to pay them. As soon as we have the funds to be able to pay them, we will pay them.
I'll try and
I anticipate that it,
I'll try and keep.
I anticipate that it will be tomorrow.
Didn't ask you for anticipation. I'll try and keep the questions simple so that you can respond briefly. I'm going to call them VIR just because it's easier. Are you in arrears with VIR at this point?
The only amount owed to them is the payment that we should have made last week.
Thank you. So they are functioning, both facilities. Mr. Madden, were they included in this report? Or
Yeah.
contribution?
Yes, there was generation from both. I don't have the spreadsheet up in front of me.
So the rate calculated includes ratepayer contribution to pay VIR as well as the Petronella and Hogansburg sites, yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly, Mr. Madden referenced, I guess, a point of disagreement. I want to make sure I understand where you guys are disagreeing within this LEAC submission. He said he asked for an explanation of dispatch discrepancy between the two Wärtsilä block units, and it was not provided. Would you agree that it was not provided?
I do apologize, Commissioner Hughes. The COO of Electric has literally just stepped out of the room. I believe that we provided it.
Did you feel like you made? Do you feel like you made a response? Mr. Madden has said that you didn't.
He's back. He's back.
Yes or no? You made a response?
I believe we did, yes.
Okay, that point will, I guess, remain in disagreement. Is notable only in the sense that when you don't respond to a question to our technical consultant, the commission has nothing to go on other than the opinion of the technical consultant. So I want you to understand how that works. You either are responsive or we go with the best information that we have. The total production, Mr. Madden referenced 615 gigawatt hours per year. Is that consistent with what you expect to collect, or is that a total production number including non-revenue production?
That is a total revenue number.
A total revenue number or a total production number?
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Thank you. I'm so sorry. I missed that. That is the total production number.
Okay, Mr. Madden, did we appropriately reduce that number to a collection number by applying the limits on line loss and production non-revenue losses that have been approved by this commission, or did we just accept a different set of options from WAPA?
No, that portion of the calculation has been good for a while.
So we are applying the 6% line loss. I think it's 6%.
And yes,
Okay, without respect to what reality in line loss might actually be, or non-revenue production.
yes, that's correct in the computation, but in the deferred fuel calculation.
I'm not there. So just stay with the calculation here. Okay. Dispatch not in dispute other than what you've noted, the Wärtsilä discrepancy.
Yes, the output from the more efficient units.
Okay. I understand your position. It's otherwise not in dispute, the dispatch that you received?
No, the sales number is WAPA's and generation number is WAPA's number.
Okay, so you calculated fuel off of the dispatch that they gave you, other than the adjustment that you made for the two Wärtsilä heat rate discrepancies.
That's correct.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly, is WAPA receiving any compensation from Wärtsilä for the heat rate contractual deficiency that Mr. Madden referenced?
No.
What are you doing about that? Why not? It's a contractual rate. It should be. Do you agree that they are not meeting their contractual heat rate?
Commissioner Hughes, I would like to ask our COO of Electric, Mr. Lavinier, who is beside me today, to speak.
Sure. How's that, Mr. Lavinier? How's that contract work? What does it actually say?
Morning again, Lemon Lavinier, Chief Operating Officer, Electric Systems, WAPA. As of our most recent meeting and the data that we have, there is compliance with the heat rate that was presented by Wärtsilä. The phase 1 units are more efficient than the phase 2 units. I do not have the data that is being spoken of to be able to identify whether there's an error in the data. So I cannot comment on it further, but I do not have any evidence to suggest that the phase 1 units are outside of the contracted amounts.
Okay, well, we used the heat rate in the calculation of this LEAC. What did we use?
It is important to understand how heat rate for generators perform. The heat rate for a generator is not consistent. The heat rate for a generator will vary with the different loads on the generator. Now, when you are operating a power plant, in reality, the generator will face different levels of load. For example, on St. Croix, you will have large turbines, about 18 megawatts, but on a day very sunny.
I'm gonna stop you there because I want to be very specific to this particular group of Wärtsilä generators, which we've now been operating for 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
I would think by now that given the disparate load mix that you discussed, which I understand, you would have arrived at an expected heat rate on average to use in these calculations based on a dispatch which isn't really changing. What heat rate are we using? 9,700 or the contractual rate of 9,000, or is it your position that the contractual rate of 9,000 does not exist?
Allow me to explain. With reference to St. Thomas, the units, phase 1 units, they have a different heat rate when the load is at 2 megawatts. It has a different heat rate when the load is at 4 megawatts.
I understand that, but every month, no, but it doesn't matter. It's an average that we're trying to get at. So I understand that it changes depending on the load, but we've been operating these long enough to have some expectation of, with the changing loads, what we are expecting on an average basis. What number did we use for this LEAC fuel consumption calculation? what heat rate? Did we use the 9,700?
Well, I cannot speak to that, so I will
Okay.
allow.
Well, then
within the
that's,
model to speak.
then we will just go with whatever Mr. Madden, I guess, used. Do you have any knowledge whether,
Do you want
whether,
Mr. Madden to respond? He has his hand raised.
I just want to finish with this gentleman. You
That's
don't
fine.
have, you wouldn't appear to have any knowledge of what the contractual heat rate is. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I'm aware of the contractual heat rate.
Well,
When the engine was purchased, the contracted heat rate was 82 kilowatt hours per gallon.
May, Commissioner Hughes, Lorraine Kelly, CFO, if I may speak to that, I think I may be able to help you with your question.
Yeah, I'd like someone to tell me whether or not we feel like there's a contractual deficiency here.
So based on the fact that the heat rates do differ depending on the day and sometimes the hour, in the model, Sergeant Lundy has used an average heat rate, and that is an average based on the actual heat rates for that prior quarter. So I just want to reference that. And if you would like some more specifics, Mr. Michael Linsky from EY is currently on the call, and he can speak to that.
What I'm trying to determine is whether or not WAPA feels that there has been a violation of the contract minimum heat rate, or if in fact those units are functioning as per the contract. Can anyone answer that question?
Yes, WAPA feels that the units are performing based on the.
Thank you. The PV facilities at Petronella and Hogansburg are fully functional now. I saw the groundbreaking for Hogansburg this past week. Fully functional and included as to their electrical output, their power output. In this calculation, was there any consideration given to absorbing the costs of the BESS systems that are in place? Does this calculation include the contractual obligations of WAPA specific to the battery storage systems?
Point of correction.
Mr. Madden might be able to answer that as well. It's a financial question.
We would like to make a point of clarification on the percentage that you've referenced.
What percentage?
Lemon COO electric systems. Hogansburg plant is not fully online. It is in testing phase.
Well, it's a moot point because you've submitted an application that says it is, and we're going to use that. But being that as it may, I'm trying to determine whether or not this rate calculation includes costs to the specific that are specific to the battery storage system, or if in fact, as Mr. Knight suggested, he hasn't yet sought rate relief for those costs.
It is not.
Okay,
I can be very specific.
Okay,
In terms of the battery lease, no.
Okay, so this rate doesn't include any compensation to WAPA so that they can pay those lease rates?
That would be in the base rate.
Well, it wouldn't actually. It's a renewable expense. It should be in the LEAC, but you can take that up with Mr. Madden. We would prefer it, I think, to be in the with the other renewables costs. Okay, so
if I may clarify, the power that we get from the battery is included at the PPA rate for that purchase power agreement.
Thank you, but no lease costs are placed within the LEAC calculation.
That is correct.
Okay, you're going to want to resolve that pretty quickly because you should be collecting those amounts, but prior to collecting them, you need to bring that contract before the Public Services Commission for our approval. I don't think you should just assume that having a contract means that you get to collect on it. The RFP for the fuel contract, did the PSC get copied to that RFP? Because I've asked for it several times. I haven't seen it. Is anybody in the room? Attorney Sprain, can you tell me if we received a copy of the RFP?
I have not.
Ms. Kelly?
I do want to, while I briefly have the floor, I wanted to ask a point of clarification, but I'll follow up after this discussion.
Okay.
And
Ms. Kelly,
Hughes,
do you have any knowledge that suggests that we did receive the RFP, or you think we did?
Commissioner Hughes, we owe you an apology. Attorney Sinclair is texting me right now that she is sending it to you right now. I do apologize. I believe that RFP for some reason did not get sent. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
That was purely an oversight. It's not an
Only
intention.
only a couple months late, since Director Knight pledged that we would be included in his process such that we didn't have to start our own, which I think is one of the recommendations that Mr. Madden has made. Without asking.
Commissioner Hughes, if you say Attorney Sinclair is sending it, she's sending it to the PSC.
Yeah, her text says, I'm not sure if it was sent before. Apologies. I will send it now to make sure everybody gets it.
Make sure it gets sent to the executive director. So
Executive director, she's listening on the call right now.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I think you probably agree that receiving the RFP after the submissions period has been closed is not of a great deal use to us. But thank you. It's a couple months late. I'm not asking who the respondents are or what the nature of their response might have been, but can you give me a sense of how many respondents there were to the RFP?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your question. I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, but it was within a lot of others. We received 4 responses.
4. Thank you. And of the prior fuel contracts, are you aware that WAPA has ever submitted any contract other than the current 0.33 cent transportation? Has WAPA ever made a submission of any of these contracts for approval by the Public Services Commission?
Commissioner Hughes, Attorney Sinclair is in communication with me right now. And as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, she believes that all fuel contracts have been sent to the PSC.
That's not what I asked. I asked if they had been sent with a request for approval.
I can't speak to whether they were sent with a request.
I've been on the commission now 9 years. I can attest that no request has ever been made other than the 33 cents for an approval by the PSC. All the contracts that are currently in function have been made by WAPA, and whether or not they've been supplied to us, which is like pulling hen's teeth, there's been no request that we actually speak to their sufficiency. Since January, we've been allowing you to over collect the LEAC rate, which is to say to collect a rate in excess of that which we have calculated is the appropriate rate for fuel and renewable resources. You as the Chief Financial Officer have put forward a number for the deferred fuel account that I'm sure changes on your books month to month. You've been collecting amounts that we have by order allocated to that deferred fuel account as a previous or advanced payment. Have you made the accounting entries on your books for the last 6 months to reduce the deferred fuel account on WAPA's books for the amounts received?
Commissioner Hughes, we are currently in process of finalizing FY 21, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we are in process of making those adjustments. We have made the adjustments for the first few months. We are currently working on the May financials, and I believe that adjustment for May will be made in the month of May. We've been making those adjustments monthly.
Okay, so just to be clear, and you're under oath here, you're testifying that you have made accounting entries to debit the deferred fuel account for each of the months since we began allowing you to over collect that up until perhaps May, which is not closed yet. Is that your testimony?
I do believe so, but today, as soon as we leave this meeting, I will go and confirm and make sure that we have, and I will get back to the PSC with a specific response. I don't want to misspeak under oath, sir.
So if we were to ask you, for instance, for an accounting of all adjustments made to the deferred fuel account as a function of the over collection and rates, you would be able to the extent that you've closed those periods, you think you'd be able to provide that?
Yes, I will. And as I said, I will go back to the accounting team and make sure that has been adjusted for and give that report back to you by end of day today.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Sands.
I did have a question, this is Commissioner, Lauren Nichols Sands. Concerning, I guess your report minimum, concerning the minimum requirements, Mr. Madden, you said that the report was incomplete. And Ms. Kelly, you were saying that there were things that you didn't know were supposed to be included. I'm wondering if Mr. Madden could, let us know now what wasn't included so that you would know? And also, are those items a part of the actual minimum requirement?
Thank you, Commissioner. This is Jim Madden. Mentioned a number of times that the minimum filing requirements was an entire docket initiated by the Public Services Commission with a hearing examiner, which was meaning it was given a lot of attention. There was a report, there were commission orders. It was a while ago. I don't know the exact year, but it was a few years ago. And there are commission orders. There are hearing examiners' reports. There was one item that WAPA asked for reconsideration. That was looked at. An order was issued on that issue. And it's kind of unusual that WAPA just doesn't have this file. We're dealing with WAPA, the institution. I've tried to tell Ms. Kelly that. And when a filing is made, it says April 15th. Is actually, if you go to the petition that Director Knight signed when we received the petition, it was April 22nd. I'm not sure what the argument is. There are emails, whether it's the 15th or the 22nd, whatever. There's a very short time frame, of 6 weeks. The filing comes in 1 week late, and this hearing is 3 weeks before the end of the month. So you've already lost 4 weeks of a 6-week window. There's not a lot of time to deal with these issues once the filing is made. We've agreed in terms of accommodation, as soon as this hearing is over, spend some time during the week and send Ms. Kelly, or I'll send Counsel Sprain what I have in my files with regard to the order to make sure that it conforms with his files, and he can send them to Ms. Kelly. But it's highly unusual that WAPA cannot go back and look for a filing that was made concurrently after the minimum filing requirement. Those were extensive filings, and they were very informative, indicating what had changed and circumstances had changed, and there were tables in them that we could look at and get going on the analysis. And those were when the filings were semi-annual and we had more time to actually do the analysis. Now the filings are quarterly, and as I mentioned, there's a 6-week window from the filing date to the implementation date, and we lose 3 weeks because the commission meeting is 3 weeks into the last month, and the filing comes a week late. But yes, it is deficient. It's highly unusual that a utility wouldn't have in its files previous filings made by the utility. Highly unusual, but we'll provide them later on this week. I'll provide them to Counsel Sprain, and he can forward them to WAPA.
Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, a lot of puffery, but please know, we are here to support the requests from the PSC. We will commit to providing. I will say that I think in regards to what Georgetown Consulting just said, he mentioned, quote, a couple of tables. If you can please send me those specific tables that you want to see, we will provide them. If there are specific words or commentary that is missing, please let us know. We will provide that.
Mr. Madden, can you provide that?
Yes, I will. I'll send what's in the commission order. That's the only thing that counts. I'll leave it to Counsel Sprain to, and then once we get the filing consistent with those commission orders, if there's additional information, we'll ask for them. I mean, what is troubling is Ms. Kelly comes and says she's not aware of what we responded to Director Knight. Those responses came well after we had our conference with Ms. Kelly, who said she couldn't answer questions because they were operational. Director Knight asked us to put it in writing. We did. It came back and it was deficient. And specifically,
Mr. Madden, if I may.
I'm sorry.
Hold on.
Hold on.
Let him finish. Go ahead,
Go
Mr.
ahead. Mr. Madden,
Go
continue,
ahead.
please.
Yeah, so the issue on the heat rate is in those questions, and the guaranteed heat rates are in the 8,000s. WAPA has consistently been making projections at 9,700 BTUs for the first 3 units. The guarantees are almost the same for the first 3 and 4 through 7. They're in the 8,000s. The heat rate projected for 4 through 7 is lower. It's about 7,900, lower than the guarantee. And that's okay, consistent with the contract. The heat rates consistently for 1 through 3, for whatever operational reasons, those are the same conditions that exist for 1 through 3 and 4 through 7, has not been explained and consistently projected at 9,700. We never get information at what they come in at, but they're projected well above the contractual maximum. And so with these offers to provide information, they were, the information came late. I stayed up till 1 o'clock in the morning, rewriting those questions to Director Knight and saying, here they are, please respond to them. There was no response.
All right, thank you. Attorney Smith, you wanted to comment?
I had 2 things I wanted to get clarification on, if I may. One directed to Mr. Madden and one directed to Ms. Kelly or Mr. Levin either. Question that Commissioner Hughes asked earlier regarding payments to the former BMR sites. You made a reference to VI Rapsy. My understanding is that VI Rapsy actually operates the VI Electron sites at Hogansburg and Petronella. Were not the BMR sites acquired by InterEnergy or Jamaica Energy Partners, a different entity?
So my understanding, and I want to reference a response on that from Attorney Sinclair to me this morning. VI Rapsy is VIE, BMR and Spanish Town are InterEnergy. So I think that text from her clarifies my wording and with response to your question.
So then the question was, is InterEnergy, are you in arrears with InterEnergy, or are you current on the payments to InterEnergy?
I do not have that top of mind. I can look that up and give you an answer before we leave the PSC building today.
So now I'm confused. VI Rapsy equals VI Electron, InterEnergy equals BMR. Is that how this works?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
I apologize, Commissioner Hughes.
And we don't know if you're in arrears with the new InterEnergy people pretty much out of the box.
I do not have that number right on the top of my head. I do apologize. I can pull up my accounts payable and, like I say, give that to your staff before we leave today.
No, that's fine. I want you to understand why I asked the question. And we've done this with WAPA, God, for the last 6 or 7 years. There are many categories and rates that are general. Most of base rate is kind of a general calculation made up of many numbers. But there are elements within the rates that are very specific to simple things like OPEB and insurance, and in this case, renewables costs. And when WAPA takes the money from ratepayers for those very specific things and doesn't satisfy those obligations, this commission has in the past, and probably will in the future, suggested that perhaps you don't need to collect those amounts because they're not intended for your general working capital or even your general application to rates. They're intended for very specific policy purposes. And if you're not going to pay interagency, or for that matter, VI Rapsy, timely, then it calls into question whether or not the commission should allow you to even collect those rates to begin with, because it's not working capital. It's a stipulated rate condition that you have to satisfy or you don't get the money. So just keep that in mind, because the remedy by the commission is to simply call a hearing and reduce rates if you're not going to bother applying the funds. That's why I asked about BMR or whatever interagency or interenergy. I don't see why you should get the money from the ratepayer if you're not going to pay the vendor when it's specifically collected for that vendor. So that's when I ask these questions about specific rate-specific items, understand where we would go with that. Thank you. Sorry, Chair.
I'm finished, thank
Mr.
you.
McGrath?
Were you gonna?
I was trying to clarify one
Right.
of your questions, which was the one to Mr. Madden, which was, as I understood Commissioner Sam's question, have the MFRs been delivered to WABA? The question was, which specific MFRs are not being responded to? And preferably, can you identify what table or response is deficient in that reaction, in that
Right.
response or filing?
So they'll know for future filings what is supposed to be included. Because I've heard this before, and I don't think it's necessary, and I just feel like if there's a standard, like this is what is included in the minimum filing requirements, that there shouldn't be any questions or any comments about it in the future. So that's what I'm trying to get at.
So you said you'll provide that to Attorney Spain, who will then submit it to WAPA.
So we shouldn't have to hear that anymore, okay? Thanks.
Commissioner McGrath?
Yes, what is the current fuel deferment total?
The last month was Lorraine Kelly, Chief Financial Officer, 147 million in total.
147 million. If the cost of operating these generators is reducing, why has in 2020, the fuel deferment that was reported was $8 million. 2023, $76 million. 2024, more than $100 million. And now we're saying 147. Why is it continuing to rise at such an astronomical rate?
So the Lorraine Kelly, Chief Financial Officer, the deferred fuel is a function of the cost for fuel that we pay for both the product as well as the transportation.
But isn't that what a LEAC is for?
And the adjustments that we take from that are the revenue that we have billed to our customers. Now, on any given month, if the fuel price goes up, and we do not pass that on to our customers, then that would drive that deferred fuel up. If the amount billed to our customers goes down, just the simple calculations of it, that could drive that deferred fuel up. And we did meet specifically with the staff to talk about deferred fuel. And I'm more than happy to have additional meetings so that we can pull through the calculations on that and make sure that there is good understanding.
But have you been using the LEAC for its intended purpose, or have you been using it for other reasons?
We've been using it for intended purposes.
Then why isn't it meeting the LEAC? Why isn't it meeting the energy cost?
When you referred to 23, was that a reference to the year 2023 and the year 2024?
Yes.
So fuel prices escalated, and there was no increase in that 22.2 cents that is passed on to the customer. And so when the fuel costs increases and the amount that we pass on to the customer doesn't have a change, then that balance sheet balance is going to grow.
But why he's recommending a 15-cent rate? Why the explanation doesn't make sense? Excuse me, but it doesn't.
I can provide all of the details of that to your staff, and we can go through all of the numbers.
Let me ask you, on the new RFP, was there a reason why the contract with Vital was extended at a 59 cents rate?
Yes, we made the decision to reduce that from the maximum, which it was at 73 cents.
That was in the original. I'm talking about the extension to the original.
And I'm talking about the extension. So the contract that was negotiated a year ago had a varying rate depending on the purchase, the quantity that was purchased. If we purchased a high quantity of LPG, then the transportation came down. And so we had 3 transportations in the previous contract, 55 cents, 59 cents, and 73 cents. And when we went on the date of the Wärtsilä Phase 2 went live was December the 18th. And so with the expectation that we would have the performance at full capacity, we would not have been buying as much fuel as we had in the past. So we made the decision to negotiate that as a fixed cost.
Extend the Vital contract again?
There is a procurement process right now. I myself do not know the 4 respondents, and I will be sitting in the meeting on Thursday, finding out the report from the evaluation committee.
I don't think that was a question.
Is the meeting open to the public?
Let me, I don't think so. I do apologize. I think it's a board meeting that is available. And if that's, I do apologize. I think I may have misspoken. It is the board meeting that is public.
I think the question was, is there an expectation that WAPA will extend the Vital contract that is due to expire in August of 2025? Or do you anticipate? Well,
If the contract RFP provides us a solution that we're going to move forward with, we will move forward with that solution. If we do not have a better, whether it's more efficient, lower cost, then, and if we do not have a contract negotiated in time, we may need to extend that VTOL contract. But my expectation is that the evaluation committee, in communication with Mr. Knight, again, this is outside of my role, so I don't want to misspeak something that is a reporting function to Mr. Knight. He is not present, and I don't want to misspeak. I'm under oath, and I want to make sure I'm saying the right thing. But based on my understanding, we received respondents. I do not know myself what is going to be presented to the finance committee on Thursday. So I don't want to misspeak.
Will the results of those respondents be available to the public at some point?
I'm going to have to defer to the Attorney Sinclair as to whether those get made public or not. I apologize, I don't know myself. I don't want to misspeak.
Is Attorney Sinclair on the line? I can respond.
Attorney Sinclair, can you
And Mr. Manning had a
speak?
response to one of the
Yes,
questions.
good afternoon to the PSC, Deion Sinclair, General Counsel. So the procurement guidelines, processes, and procedure basically creates a bubble, so to speak, until a determination is made by the evaluation committee, then forwarded to the executive director and then the board. So yes, once a procurement has been finalized, the contract, the RFP is already available online on WAPA's website. It's available to the public and soliciting bids. But in terms of the contract itself and those documents, those become available once approved as a public available document. It'll be on the website as well.
And Attorney
So
Sinclair?
how do we know if WAPA made a good decision based, without being able to see the four submissions?
Once the bid is open, so to speak, we could arrange to have the PSC privy to that information. Usually we tell bidders that if there is any proprietary information within the proposal, that they let us know, because we're subject to FOIA and open records rules and all of that, just like any other public-facing entity. So our documents are transparent and available once the evaluation committee has completed their work, just not now during the procurement process.
At a meeting on Thursday, can someone from the PSC sit in on that meeting?
No, so
When you're opening up bids?
the bids were opened, and forgive me, I forget the date. So the bids were already open, and then the evaluation committee takes those bids and does their work. The meetings on Thursdays are committee meetings, so the committee meetings are not open to the public. The regular board meeting, which is 2 weeks following the committee meeting, are open to the public, where full discussions will be had on various topics, whatever is on the agenda for that week.
Mr. Madden had an answer.
Mr. Madden, you wanted to say something?
Just very briefly, to respond to the commissioner's inquiry about why deferred fuel is going up. It's not, the easy thing to say it's the price of fuel. It's not the price of fuel. Everybody knows that. If you look at the filing is consistently made over the last couple of years, saying that the efficient generation is coming on, projections are made assuming it's coming on, and then it doesn't. The impact of not having these efficient units on are phenomenal. And that's what's causing the deferred fuel to go up. WAPA says it's going to happen and never happens. This is the first time they say it's going to happen. It looks like it's in testing. It's now projected to happen, and we hope it happens. And that's when WAPA's number itself, rather than our 15 cents, is 16 point some cents. It's not a huge difference. It's a cent and change between our recommendation and WAPA's recommendation. They themselves are recommending that the fuel cost will be $32 million less than the fuel revenue they'll collect. That's a big number, and it's the first time. It's now hopefully going to happen. It's to everybody's benefit, to WAPA's benefit, to the ratepayers' benefit, if the commission lowers the rate or does whatever they do with the rate. This is the first time that it might happen. And it's not the price of fuel. It's the generation that keeps breaking down, the repairs, the outages, the heat rates of the replacement units are phenomenally high, and that's what causes the deferred fuel to go up. It's not the price of fuel. It's just too easy to say, and I wanted to correct that.
So, Mr. Madden, Lorraine Kelly, Chief Financial Officer, thank you for explaining that. You are absolutely correct. I was giving you an example. I wasn't giving you all of the reasons. Let me rephrase. There are many, many reasons, and there are many factors that go into the criteria for the deferred fuel. I absolutely agree with Mr. Madden. When we project for the efficiency of the units to be at a particular performance level, and that performance level is not met. For example, if I project in our quarterly forecast that we will be able to pay LPG, which is currently at 75 cents, right? 4 weeks ago, we were paying 70 cents a gallon. It's now gone up to 75 cents. However, if we cannot use those engines at full capacity of performance, and we have to use diesel, then the cost of diesel is greater. So when I referenced fuel prices increasing, what I meant in the model is the cost of the fuel that goes into the model at 75 cents versus the cost of the fuel going into the model being $2.01, which is currently what we're paying. So I do apologize. I didn't want that to be misconstrued. My intention was that the price in the model has gone up because of the fact that the efficiencies were not there, and we were not able, for example, in February, when we had to bring the units, phase 2 Wärtsilä units down, units 4, 5, 6, and 7. We took 3 of them down because they had some damage. We took the 4th one down as a precautionary measure to make sure it did not get damaged. But when those 4 engines went down, we immediately had to switch to diesel. So from a mathematical modeling perspective, the fuel price then shifts from the 75 cents or whatever we were paying for fuel at that time to the diesel price, which is $2.01, $2.03. So I apologize. I did not make that specificity, and I don't want you to misunderstand what I was saying.
That all seemed true, Ms. Kelly. You still in the last
Hold on, Commissioner, let Commissioner McGrath finish his question.
But when the Wärtsilä units are not functioning as contracted, are they in breach of contract?
Attorney Sinclair, could you speak to the legality?
Attorney Sinclair hasn't been sworn in either. So she
I have just one more question, and then I'll let David take over. Are you negotiating any union contracts right now?
We have an opener for the next round of union contracts that we have begun. The head of HR generally manages those contract negotiations, and I am a participant on those. We have had some initial union discussions.
How can you in good faith enter union contract negotiations when you just told us before that WAPA is broke?
We enter union contracts, that does not mean that by default there's an increase. You know, and entering a negotiation does not mean that you come to the table with a predetermined outcome. The negotiations are a process that we go through in order to determine.
But it's a good faith gesture to the unions that they're willing to negotiate.
And
that there is something there for them.
Right, and without sharing confidences, there have been what I would describe as healthy debate.
Commissioner Hughes, you had something you wanted to comment on?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the response that Ms. Kelly made with respect to the deferred fuel pricing. It also ignores one absolutely huge factor that no one ever seems to want to talk about. If you recall my question of Mr. Madden, whether or not he applied the commission stipulated non-revenue components, it's basically what we do is we look at the dispatch and we look at how much power it's going to produce relative to sales forecasts, and then we factor in a certain amount of waste, if you will. And the commission has set the levels for how much waste is acceptable. WAPA regularly vastly exceeds the amount of waste in its produced power. They do that by not billing certain customers, but they are so far exceeding what we call line loss or non-revenue production. And that means that they're buying fuel to produce power that they're not able to bill for or have not billed for. It's a function of the AMI system. There's a lot of reasons for it, but it's a huge, huge number, particularly in St. Croix, where they are exceeding the limits that the commission has set. So they're not billing for all the power they produce, even though they're burning all the fuel for the power that they produce. So that's another big component of why we miss. WAPA seems to feel like they get to simply deduct what they collect versus what they spend, and that is absolutely not how deferred fuel is calculated. But I'll let the staff and WAPA have that discussion as they continue to meet on this deferred fuel topic. I just have really the penultimate question for Ms. Kelly. I forgot to ask it earlier. Mr. Madden has calculated this number of 0.1539, 15.39 cents as the correct LEAC number for compensation for fuel, applying the metrics, applying your dispatch, applying your sales numbers, applying the total production that you expect. Other than the one aberration where Mr. Madden has adjusted for the variable heat rates of one Wärtsilä group to the next, which is not a substantial amount. Do you agree with the 0.139 calculation as the calculation for fuel according to the formulas provided by the commission? I'm not saying that you're signing up for the rate. I'm just saying is his calculation of 0.1539 correct as a function of the information that you've supplied to him? Do you dispute the number?
Commissioner Hughes, in the same regard that Georgetown Consulting says that he has 6 weeks to be able to pour through the numbers that we provide, and that he has not had sufficient amount of time, I would dutifully ask that I have some time to be able to go through the numbers that he's provided.
Come on, you calculate your own rate using the same data. Did you get the same answer?
I don't want to misspeak, sir.
It's just math. It's your dispatch, it's your sales projection, which yields an amount of fuel to be purchased. You're using the same fuel cost projection that he is. You may be using a different transportation rate, but you're using the same forward-looking Mount Bellevue benchmark pricing that he's using. In fact, I think he generally goes over it with WAPA to make sure that everyone's in agreement with the way that's calculated. I've been part of those meetings in the past.
So,
Did
sir,
you get a different number? And if you did, what is the number that you got?
My back of the envelope number is 16.8.
You're the CFO. It shouldn't be back of the envelope, first of all.
Well, me calculating it right now, it's 16.8. So I don't want to misspeak and I don't want to antagonize you.
Well, we're
coming up with 16.8.
We're in a meeting to determine your electric LEAC. And it would be helpful if you had a legitimate, not back of the napkin opinion so that we could debate which one's correct. You didn't offer that number in any of your testimony. You simply referred to Mr. Madden's number and that you'd like to keep the difference. We need to determine the actual number, and then we determine whether we keep the difference. Are you offering a number that you've spent time on?
I'm coming up with 16.8, sir.
Well, I have, I guess, not a great deal of confidence in your process if you're telling me that you just did it. Ernst & Young give you a number? They do these calculations for you. What did they give you for the number?
16.8.
You're saying that Mr. Madden's off by 1.4 cents. Okay. That's.
If I may ask Ernst & Young, Mike Linsky, who is on this call, Mike, can you please speak?
No, hold on. We're not gonna go there.
Okay.
And that's fine. I appreciate that you've got a number. So now we can actually, in our discussion today about what you're going to get back here, maybe we use 16.8. Maybe we use 16.4.
So then the 16.8 is not a back of the napkin number because you came in knowing that number from Ernst & Young. So I mean, don't represent that.
Let's assume it's well calculated and calculated under the same metrics. 16.8. Thank you.
Mr. Madden, you indicated that a 1 cent reduction in the LEAC is equivalent to, I believe you testified, $6 million savings. I thought in the past I heard that was the equivalent of 5 million. Is it 5 or 6?
1 cent is approximately 6 million, a little more than 6 million.
Okay, so 6 million.
Chair, as sales go up, that number goes up. Sales have been going up. So.
Right.
Okay. But in the past, it has been 5 million.
That's correct.
But currently it's 6. Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Kelly, you were here the last time we considered the LEAC rate, and the commission allowed WAPA to keep the current rate on a couple of conditions. You recall that?
Yes.
Has the WAPA complied with those conditions?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
So you've met with the staff and you've made some arrangement to determine and calculate what the deferred fuel account balances are?
Yes, we did meet with the staff, and I'm trying to remember, I'm looking at Lloyd Tony Spren, your executive director, to try and, I'm trying to remember the specifics of the conversation. And whether we talked specifically about that, and again, sir, I don't want to misspeak.
Okay, well, they'll speak for them about themselves, but I don't think that that's their position. The other issue was paying the invoices and some of the accounts payable. Have we done that?
So every day, every hour, I receive calls regarding vendors, and we have to make some very tough choices as to which vendors we pay. Not an easy decision. And we have chosen to provide a payment in the last week to the PSC of approximately $50,000. I think it was 49 and change. And I gave you a check this morning for approximately $50,000. Again, I think it was 49 and change. We have not had the funds with which to pay any greater amount for the annual assessment. As I mentioned earlier, our first priority is to be able to pay the fuel. We have 3 payments that we must make. Fuel and our paying for our debt are 2 primary payments that we must make. And beyond that, we are making very specific decisions regarding the prioritization of which vendors we pay.
Can you briefly, my last question, speak to where WAPA is in terms of your hurricane preparation for this hurricane season?
Overall, we would like to be better prepared. I think, to be candid with you, if we had more funds in the bank account, we would perhaps be better prepared. We have sought grant for vegetation management, and we're going through that grant process so that we can be better prepared on the vegetation management. But I would like to defer to our COO, Mr. Lavinier, to speak to any specifics regarding the plant production.
Lemon Lavinier, Chief Operating Officer, Electric Systems.
I can't hear you.
Yes, Lemon Lavinier, Chief Operating Officer, Electric Systems. We have, as Ms. Kelly highlighted, we are not in the position that we prefer to be in. We have done our best with the resources that we have available to bring in some transformers. We're working on getting our trucks in. We're also trying to source some new trucks, but we are working with resources available. As the resources improve, we expect to improve our position in preparation for the storms.
So we get hit by a hurricane on September 1st, are we prepared to respond?
We expect to have increased resources, more resources than we have now at that time.
Do you all have, I'm sure you do, like an operating plan or just something to go into hurricane season with the things that you'd like to have in place before we go into the hurricane season on file? So when that question is asked, I kind of want to hear like more specific, not a very vague answer, so that I know like, how prepared are you? We are short this, we need this, to be more specific, because we live here and, you're a lifeblood. So I really want to know, not a vague answer, but I want to know a specific answer as to where you are in preparation for the hurricane season. Thank you.
Well, we did not prepare, don't have that information right now, but we can make the information available to you.
And Lorraine Kelly.
Hold on.
I think that information is very important, not just to me and
to the community.
the public needs to know that. So,
Mr. Lavier, we're in hurricane season.
We're here.
Hold on. You know what happens? That should be one of the most important things in WAPA's senior management mind. So don't tell me that you're not prepared to do that. You've got to know that information like you know your name, because that is critical to this community. So do better than that. Come on, tell us what's going on, where you are, what needs to be done.
With respect to our needs and exactly where we are with meeting the needs, we'll be able to provide you a documented report on where we are with respect to the needs.
Okay, that
That
and
was
maybe in the
not,
next meeting,
No, no.
have
That
more
was-
specifics for the public to hear.
Provide us with a report within 7 days.
that we can do.
And Commissioner Williams, if I may add, I do apologize. We actually do have that. We don't have that with us.
I
But
should bring it. I
and
mean, if
it
that's
wasn't on
something
the
very-
agenda,
it
and I
wasn't
do
on the agenda, But
apologize.
it's still a
But
question that
if
could
I-
come up. We are in hurricane season.
Of course. And
So you
if
have to
I-
anticipate these questions.
If I may just provide some addition, we do have one of the team, Mr. Don Gregoire, who's the head of our emergency response. He is the one that gathers all of that report from all of the management of the organization. He meets with Vitima regularly. Mr. Lavinier and myself
Is he listening
provide.
online now?
I do apologize. I don't think he is.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. We will make sure that he's on
Thank you.
meetings going forward.
I appreciate that.
And we will also make sure that any reports from his frequent meetings with Vitima, that he can provide them to the PSC Commission.
Thank you.
Yes,
Mr.
okay.
Chair, you were gonna respond to that? We actually did send, letters requesting the annual emergency, plan to each of the utilities. I think to date, we've only received, the plan from, Liberty.
Ms. Reynolds might know better who we receive responses from.
Right.
I've had, Liberty Broadband, Liberty Broadband,
So I can't hear you.
about 3 or 4 reports so far.
Okay.
I
But none from WAPA.
No.
I believe last year we assembled, I think, 16 or 17 entities that responded with the plans, which we forwarded to Vitima as a package. It's our intention to do that again, but they've been slow in coming in, but we are getting responses to
Thank you.
inquiries. We had not seen one from WAPA as yet.
All right, thank you for your presentation. Next item.
Oh, LEAC rate? We gotta settle LEAC rate, sir?
Yeah.
Discussion? Chair?
I'm trying to figure out whether you wanted to do the next item first before we take discussion or motions.
What's the next item?
And then WAPA, result of RFP for LPG supplier. We already discussed.
Why would we move on from the LEAC report without considering a motion for rates?
All right, we can do that.
So,
Discussion on,
yeah, I'd like to have some discussion with my fellow commissioners on this. I'd like to note a couple just financial facts. We've allowed WAPA to collect approximately $18 million in excess of actual calculated and agreed upon fuel costs in the last 2 LEAC periods for purposes of, I guess, pre-funding anticipated deferred fuel amounts. We very consistently noted in this discussion to both WAPA in both the February and March meetings that they needed to do 2 things in order to keep that pipeline of over collection flowing. First is they needed to pay their bill to the PSC. We provided them $18 million of working capital. I personally don't think it's asking too much that they honor their obligation to the PSC and provide us with $1 million of funding or whatever our current bill is for the assessment. The second condition was that they pay some attention to the whole concept of deferred fuel and care enough about it that they get with staff and make a proposal, which according to staff, they have not done. They had 1 meeting. There were no numbers proposed, and I don't even know if a second meeting has been scheduled, but the first one didn't even occur until about 2 weeks ago. So there's been no good faith attempt to satisfy the second condition that I had with respect to allowing them to over collect from ratepayers. Are we going to allow them to just continue to over collect these amounts without attempting to substantiate them? And it's going to go on forever. They're always going to need more money. That's a question for my fellow commissioners. What are your thoughts on continuing WAPA to not respond to our requests, that they resolve this question and still collect the money anyway.
Finished?
Yeah,
Commissioner
Well, I
Sims?
think, do you want to make a motion, Dave?
I want to talk about it. I mean, we're done with testimony. I don't,
Bill.
at this point, I've heard what Mr. Madden and Ms. Kelly have to say about it. I think we've got good information in front of us. The question is, under what logic do we continue WAPA to collect as though they have an established deferred fuel amount when they're making no attempt to establish a deferred fuel amount? It's only been 6 months.
Commissioner McGrath? Comment?
None of this.
I agree that there needs to be a rate reduction on the LEAC based on what the consultants are recommending. There's gotta be a reduction from the 22 cents. I agree that we've allowed them to collect or over collect the last 6 months or so. I'm not sure that we wanna go to the full, 15 cents, 15.3 or 5%. I think Ms. Kelly has thrown out a bid of 16.8 cents. Maybe something along those lines that still allow them, at least from what the consultants are saying, to still over collect a little bit, help pay off some of their outstanding invoices, but at the same time provide some relief to the ratepayers. I think that's only fair and reasonable. So I think we just need to come up with what that number is. So that, again, WAPA is on notice that, these are all conditions for, not taking the number down to the 15.3 cents. If they continue not to comply, then at the next hearing in September or shortly before then we're probably gonna have to go to that, bottom line number. But we're trying to work with them, but, obviously they're not doing as much work as they need to meet our expectations. So somebody's gonna have to take the bull by the horn and do that. Or else, that's what's gonna happen at the next go round.
May I suggest that maybe we meet halfway, cut the difference in half,
About 16.
and maybe something like an 18.75.
I was thinking more like a 16.
I wouldn't want to go so close. That was-
Well, I was looking at the rate that Georgetown Law proposed, and then the rate that Ms. Kelly proposed.
I mean, the rate is.
The median
difference
between
is-
those two.
The difference is 7 cents. So you're talking about if you add 3 to the 13, to the 15, you come up to 18, which is I think what.
Yeah, which is
what
Oh,
suggested.
Okay.
I was splitting the 7, seven.
Oh, you were going, okay, I was looking at the proposed rate.
And then if they, by the next meeting, if they have not paid, the PSC and met some other benchmarks that we set, then we drop it to the 15 point, whatever.
Like to hear from Raymond.
Is Raymond here? I think
Is he on the line?
No.
He's right there. Yeah.
He's driving.
I'm here, I'm listening, I'm listening, yeah. And forgive me, but I think to the original point by Hughes, the fact that we've given WAPA all the opportunities to continue to collect revenues beyond what the rates are, and the fact that they're not paying. For me, the part that bothers me the most is the fact that outside of all the other expenses they may have, that they're not even attempting to pay the PSC. It's assessments. So, I agree. I think the general consensus is to, I don't know necessarily if it's a matter of giving them yet still another opportunity, but at least to ensure that if they don't, then, I think sooner than later that we may need to take that additional step to then determine what the rate is and how that money is going to be utilized.
I understand how Ernst & Young makes their calculations. And if Ms. Kelly is representing that Ernst & Young has also calculated a rate of 16.8, I know enough about how they arrive at that number to know it's very consistent with the manner in which Georgetown Consulting proceeds with this. They use the same fuel transportation costs. They use the same dispatch. If they got to 16.8, I'm willing to accept that, which is WAPA's, I guess, justification for fuel costs, and motion that rate. I am unwilling to motion that they continue to overcollect this rate, given the lack of response we've received to them on the two conditions that we've been very consistent that they need to meet. This is a 3-month rate. WAP will have a chance in August to have resolved the deferred fuel question yet again, and they will also have had an opportunity to pay the PSC. So I think they need to be put in the penalty box for 3 months while we consider the deferred fuel account, and I'll motion the 16.8 that Ms. Kelly offered.
If I may say, Lorraine Kelly, CFO, I'm being.
I'm sorry, we're having a discussion amongst the commissioners. Not much interested in you telling us how catastrophic this is going to be to you. You've had 6 months to make responses to this item, and you show no interest in resolving the deferred fuel question. So you've collected $18 million in additional working capital. It's generous from the PSC, and you've met none of our conditions, and I don't think you should continue. You know, ultimately, this $140 million number could be zero, and they will have gotten the 18 million as an over collection. But by math that Ernst & Young has provided to them, the deferred fuel account is false and can easily be construed as zero or negative, meaning they owe ratepayers money when you figure in government subsidies and the fuel transportation costs. So there's no assumption here that there is any deferred fuel amount coming to WAPA, and we've already given them 18 million as a prepayment. I don't want to keep building that number against the eventuality that they didn't, in fact, weren't able to establish any deferred fuel. So I think we need to cut the spigot off until we answer that question. I'll motion the 16.8.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion.
Did you make a motion, Commissioner?
No, I'm more than happy to Commissioner Sam's motion. I'd love to hear it.
I'd love for you to hear it. I'd like to make a motion of 0.17. 17 point.
No, 0.17 is correct.
Would you?
Right. 0.17.
Just a what's it called? Point of order.
The reason why I'm making this motion for 0.17, because I'm really concerned that WAPA is not prepared for hurricane season. I don't know what resources they still need. So I don't want to go with 16.8 that Ms. Kelly says that Ernst & Young provided for her. I want to do 17 to give them something so that they can get prepared for hurricane season.
I'm not asking for an amendment, but I'd just like to point out that in our prior two LEACs, we've taken any differential from what we determined to be the accurate fuel cost, and we've allocated it to prepayment of deferred fuel amounts. Would you clarify your motion of 17 cents as to whether or not you're going to allocate any portions of that to future deferred fuel, or whether or not this represents just fuel amount? Could you state your motion in such a way that it clarifies the difference?
So
I mean, there's either a 0.2 cent or a 1.6 cent differential between fuel cost and 17 cents. Are we just going to gift that to WAPA and say that's the fuel amount, or are we going to allocate that against any future deferred fuel settlement?
Well, I didn't say fuel settlements. I was talking about preparation for hurricane season.
What are we doing with the extra amounts, Commissioner Sam? Do you want to allocate it or just call it the fair fuel price?
I want to allocate it towards hurricane season preparation.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, you might not agree, but that's what I.
That's
I
okay.
want.
So you made a motion for 17 cents. I second that motion.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on that?
Yes, I think we should just clarify how much of that is actual related to the fuel calculation and clarify. I essentially think we should
You
clarify
say-
that the remainder is deferred fuel prepayment as we have in the last two LEACs.
Any other comments? Okay, if not, roll call?
Roll call, Commissioner McGrath,
No,
Commissioner Nichols Sands,
Yes.
Commissioner Raymond Williams,
Can you, before I vote, can you restate that motion so I can be clear, please?
The LEAC rate will be 17 cents. The LEAC rate will be 17 cents.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Pedro Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have four
change my vote,
voting.
change my vote, yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 voting yea, the motion is carried.
Thank you. The Whopper, water LEAC?
I think I can make this much shorter.
Yeah.
If everyone would prefer. WAPA has not requested a change in the LEAC rate. Georgetown has not recommended a change in the LEAC rate. It's normally set on an annual basis, but because potential changes, we've been reporting on it quarterly. If there's no action taken on this, the current rate will remain in place.
I move that the current rate remain in place. Motion, Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Hughes.
I move that the water LEAC rate remain at its current rate for the next 3 months. So
There's a second?
We can discuss it.
Okay.
Discussion?
Yes, this LEAC rate for water, are we still experiencing 50% line loss? That's what was reported in the last meeting.
It does vary month to month, and it's approximately that, yes. But what I will say is some changes. Lorraine Kelly, CFO, it is approximately 50%. What I will say is in the last 8 weeks or so, we have installed approximately 4,000 new water meters to replace either non-functioning or damaged water meters. And to Commissioner Hughes' comment previously regarding electric, we've done the same with electric, but specifically to water, we have installed new meters, which should assist us to gain more billing from a perspective of any malfunctioning meter. The water may be passing, but the record count of the usage may not be fully accurate. So that should be helping us. And I want to make sure that when we talk about line loss, there is, in the calculations, we only use the accepted line loss, not our actual line loss. So there is a differential that we are effectively not passing on that additional cost to those customers.
What is your accepted line loss percentage?
Sorry, give me a minute.
And so much paying for LEAC, 50%.
I agree. I have a question about that exactly.
9.1%.
9.1 and we're at 50%. Is that what, that's just what you?
No, what we're saying is that the 50% is the
Actual.
number of meters that are not being read accurately to give us. There's line loss in excess of that percentage that we're allowed. And bear with me 1 minute, I'm getting the team.
I'm
I
really
don't know that number off the
confused
top of my
with
head.
The question was
I'm under
not-
oath and I'm.
The question was
I don't
not
wanna
the
misspeak.
number of meters that are not working. The question
Oh, I
was what
understand.
percentage of the water that's being produced is being lost? What's the actual line loss?
it would be impossible to know that, Commissioner McGrath. You'd have to figure in the other portion, which is just not being billed. You don't know if it's lost in the ground or lost to non-billing.
But if they're producing 100 gallons of water and they're being paid for 50,
Yeah, well, that's the difference. We don't know where that's occurring. We don't know if that's a billing problem or a leakage problem, but it's still the important number. Is that 50%?
I do apologize. I do not have that number on the top of my head. I'm asking the team to get that to you.
Just so you know, Ms. Kelly, the PSC has offered you no guidance whatsoever on line loss for water. That was only an electric thing.
St. Thomas water line loss is about 15%. St. Croix is
much?
close 1.5. St. Thomas is 1.5, 15%. St. Croix is closer to 5.0, 50%.
And when you say St. Thomas, you're talking St. Thomas, St. John, water.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. St.
So
Thomas, St. John is about 1.5, 15%. St. Croix is closer to 5.0, 50%.
So you're collecting payment for 85 gallons out of every 100 that you produce?
and St. Thomas.
Yes. Is that how we can interpret that number, that statement? You're billing 85% of the water you produce
St. Thomas.
in
Correct,
St. Thomas and St. John. Ms.
And the
Kelly?
St. Thomas, St. John district.
correct,
Okay, and in St. Croix, it's half.
correct.
Okay,
Which is why we've had very significant efforts in terms of making sure to your comment, sir, in terms of, sorry, Commissioner Hughes, in terms of the multiplicity of various factors impacting that. We have made very specific efforts to address that.
So can we expect an updated report in 3 months in terms of all these meters, the 4,000 meters that
Yes.
you've installed?
Yes,
So we'll get an updated report on that.
yes.
Were the meters installed on St. Thomas or St. John or St. Croix?
Or all three islands.
We did meter installations on all 3 islands. I do not remember off the top of my head what was which island. I asked the team for an update just in total today, so that I could report that out to you.
since we're having the discussion, staff made a recommendation, Mr. Madden made a recommendation that we motion.
I do have a specific.
Go ahead.
So we installed 2,400 water meters. The team said St. Thomas, so that would include St. John as well. And there were 600 on St. Croix.
And out of that number, what percentage of damaged meters does that cover that you replace? Like you probably have like X amount of meters that are damaged that need to be replaced. So what percentage does that amount that you replace represent what actually needs to be replaced? You know what I'm saying?
May I get that number to you by end of day?
That's perfect, thank you.
Just to continue my last thought, Mr. Madden suggested we motion that the water LEAC be revisited with the results of the electric LEAC rate change or conclusion. I don't know why that he would want, frankly, that motioned, because every time they calculate the water LEAC, they're supposed to be calculating it. It uses up a lot of power, and they're supposed to be calculating that against the current electric rates. So that's going to occur anyway next August, September, and it will cause the water LEAC rate to be insufficient, because if they're billing less over or collecting less from the calculation to 7Cs, then it's just an inverse relationship. So you should expect that 9.1 to be insufficient slightly due to the LEAC downward change, if I understand how that works. So, but I don't know why we need. Yeah.
Sorry, we have a motion that's been made and seconded, and that discussion, roll call.
Commissioner McGrath,
Yes.
Commissioner Nicholson. Yes. Commissioner Raymond Williams. Commissioner Williams,
Appears to be gone.
Commissioner Williams absent, Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Pedro Williams.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, you have 4 voting yea, 1 absent. Motion is carried.
all right, thank you. Any other business, new business?
Mr. Chair, I do have one further motion here. Recommendation by our consultants. I move that a new docket be opened to investigate the fuel acquisition contract in our next meeting.
To investigate the fuel acquisition contract?
The fuel acquisition process, contractual process. I think we're gonna get there. We might as well open the docket and establish it in anticipation of the line of questioning that is going to occur.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Attorney Spring? Can you give us an opinion on that?
No. I don't know what the question would be. Can we open a docket? Certainly.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we can open a docket. I'm questioning whether we really have any purview in looking into the process, since we don't have access to the process.
Well, we don't have access to the process at this time. Should
Yeah.
have access to what the process was once the contracts are.
Okay, I have no problem with the motion. I'm just clarifying.
Timing issue and when we'll get the information. Yeah,
If
we should
we don't have
access.
if we don't have a docket, we don't have the ability to investigate the contract after the fact.
All right, any other discussion? Motion, yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
roll call on that.
Commissioner McGrath.
Yes.
Commissioner Nicholson.
Yes.
Commissioner Raymond Williams. Commissioner Williams absent. Commissioner Hughes.
Yes.
Commissioner Pedro Williams.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, 4 voting yea, 1 absent. The motion is carried.
all right,
If Ms. Sinclair is still on the line, I have one further question with respect to that process. Attorney Sinclair?
I don't see her on the screen.
I do.
Okay.
Good afternoon, attorney. Just one question. With respect to this fuel acquisition process that WAPA is completing, either before or after it's completed and approved by your board, do you intend to submit that contract to the Public Services Commission for approval?
We can certainly share the contract with the.
I didn't ask that. I asked if you're going to submit it for approval.
Once the board has a chance to review and decide on the contract, we can forward that and we will to the PSC. And I just, in light of.
hold on, I missed the response.
My response is, once the board has had an opportunity to review and decide upon the contract, we will forward that to the commission for their review as well.
You understand, and I'd like to get resolution for WAPA on this issue of transportation costs, because it's obviously a huge difference in the net cost of fuel, which is your largest cost driver. I'd like to get an agreement by the PSC and WAPA as to what that number is. It's currently 0.33 because it's the last time you've asked. I'd like that you come and ask the PSC for its approval of that process so that we can change that number from 0.33. But if you don't, I'm not of the opinion that we will ever change that number. You can pay whatever you want, sign whatever contracts you like. You get to recover what the PSC has approved.
I fully understand it, and
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. I just want to make sure we have that understanding. So
I think we all fully understand that. I think all of us are curious. The process should show what the current transportation fee realistically should be. I understand that 33 cents from 2012 is being by the PSC. I don't know, given the lack of data, that is actually supported now in 2025. We should know that from this process, and then I think we can all work together to come to a rate that is realistic and fair.
Okay. Well, I'd love to get to an understanding that WAPA has pursued a rigorous bid process and acquisition process for fuel that was open and brought as many participants as possible to the table so that we can have confidence, which I don't think we necessarily do right now, that the cost of transportation that we're paying is absolutely as good as we can get. I don't have any thoughts on what that number is. I suspect it's not 0.33 and it probably shouldn't be 0.75. But I just want to get to an understanding with the utility that they did their job in the acquisition and that we can have confidence in a number. We can't do that. We can't do that unless you participate in that conversation.
We are on the same page.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you. There's nothing further to speak, Mrs. Jones.
Thank you. So you're.
What's the lawyers?
No. Speak for yourself. Satori, I just want to go over this with you, but I'm going to send you some information.
Nice to see you.
See, it's not